Well, welcome, folks. This is ARC 1254, building security into your ArcGIS system. My name is Gregory Ponto. I'm a security engineer on the software security and privacy team at Esri. And almost everything you're going to see, basically everything you're going to see in this session, you can reference it at trust.arcgis.com. So you'll see that URL through this session. You'll also see some QR codes. Those will essentially deep links to some of the content we're talking about here. So without further ado, we'll get started. We're going to cover really kind of three main areas. We're going to start with compliance updates around ArcGIS Online. We're going to then look at some guidance for hardening both enterprise and online, talk a little about ZTA, Zero Trust Architecture. Then we're going to jump into some demos. Look at the ArcGIS Security and Privacy Advisor, which is a free tool that our team maintains to help ensure the security posture of both ArcGIS Enterprise and online organizations. And then we'll jump into developer-focused automation, authentication flows, and some new features that we've released to make that a whole lot easier. And then we'll do Q&A discussion at the end. All right, so let's get right into it. Compliance. So compliance is kind of like helps us adopt the products. I asked this question at the beginning of the session, do you want the boring stuff first or do you want the fun developer stuff first? Everybody said they want to leave their dessert for the end, so okay, fine, we'll start with the boring stuff, i.e. compliance. But it is important and it is a big part of what my team does. So off the bat, know that ArcGIS Online, in terms of compliance, under FedRAMP, which is arguably the most rigorous compliance standard in the world, next to maybe ISO, has been FedRAMP authorized under the low impact level for 7 years. And as of 2024, we moved to moderate impact level. And the real advantage from customer adoption perspective with respect to moderate impact level basically means now you can host more than just public data, because with the low impact level, at least from the NIST, FedRAMP compliance standards, low meant public data only. Moderate means data of moderate sensitivity, which means non-public data. Also PII, controlled unclassified information, can also be stored in online, at least from the federal government's compliance authorization perspective, right? Which a lot of organizations kind of take flow downs from. NIST is the ultimate arbiter of those controls. The key difference is that in terms of the number of security controls we were auditing under low, it was less than 50. At moderate, it's 320. So massive jump in security assurance. The truth is we were always doing those controls, but we hadn't been audited to that standard until 2024, and that audit was successful. So really proud of that, and especially for anyone that does federal work, has federal contracts, federal agencies, this is a big deal. FedRAMP is not the only compliance body that we adhere to. Again, on trust.arcgis.com, you'll see a compliance tab. That QR code takes you right to it if you want to look at it. And it covers some of the other compliance frameworks that we also align to. Things like IL2 for Department of Defense, HIPAA, and some compliance frameworks that we are working on currently, like ISO 27001. So again, from a compliance perspective, if you're part of your organizations, can I adopt ArcGIS Online? Compliance is a big part of that question. Assurance, security teams want to see this kind of stuff. So that's going to be useful for the adoption aspect of using products like ArcGIS Online. So I'll pivot a little bit into some areas of customer responsibilities with respect to either ArcGIS Online or Enterprise. We talk about hardening. So again, on trust.arcgis.com, there is a large PDF document that our team produces called the Hardening Guide. It is called the ArcGIS Enterprise Hardening Guide, although it is applicable to online as well. And it also covers some ZTA concepts. If you were to look at the Hardening Guide, it's, at first glance, it's a massive, apparently monolithic document, but we didn't author it. We actually authored it in a very structured way around this idea of security profiles. So if you look at any sort of security framework, benchmarks like CIS or DISA-STIGs, they'll have these levels of impact or assurance. The Hardening Guide is based on two profiles, two levels, basic and advanced. The basic set of controls are low operational or no operational impact. They are high security impact. So it's like best bang for your buck. Generally, the basic controls in the Hardening Guide will not break your environment, right? So we recommend everybody take a look at the basic controls and try to align your environment to those basic controls. And it's going to have guidance like implement SAML. It's going to advise against allowing everybody in your organization to share publicly, which is a very common way that we get data overexposure. It goes into even globally disabling anonymous access, things like that. At that point, so I'd recommend if you're looking at the Hardening Guide, look at it in terms of the control, the security profiles, and we'll open it up, take a look at it and see what I mean. It's kind of the best way to kind of adopt it. Now, organizations that might have a higher assurance standard, these are going to be like CIS benchmark level 2, Department of Defense, DISA-STIGs, are going to be looking more at the advanced set. The advanced set of controls will impact your operations, right? They will disable certain features, or they will block access certain features, and or configure certain features in a way that is likely operationally impactful. It gives you a higher security assurance standard, but generally speaking, when you go to the advanced control sets, you're going to want to do that on a lower environment, a test environment. Don't just like apply those controls to production. You will likely have an operational impact if you do that. So we'll take a look at these real quick. So we look at the Hardening Guide, right? As I said, it's kind of this monster, 100-page document, right? I would not expect anyone to read that end to end. What I would do is take a look at the bookmarks. Oh, you know what? I'm not sharing. Why is that not sharing? Let's see. Display settings. So, how about, there we go. Okay. Hardening Guide, right? I guess I have to stop the slideshow and jump to that. We'll do it that way, fine. Okay, very big document, right? 100 some odd pages. I don't expect you to read it end to end. I wouldn't, right? But what you want to do, as I said, is you look at these security profiles. So if we go, document contains, here we go, yeah. So two security profiles, basic and advanced. They're highlighted that way. If you look at the checklist, you're going to see basic, 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 right? Basic, and then advanced. So you'll want to look at the basic settings. These basic settings are low impact, low operational impact, high security impact. So they give you very good value for your effort, and they're not likely to break your environment. If you start looking at the advanced ones, they will implement certain things like allow lists, which will suddenly have an operational impact if you're not prepared to adopt it. So just keep that in mind. But the way this document is structured, it is a series of structured checklists, and they're all prefixed with this like basic, advanced. Now, one way to approach the hardening guide is to just try to read through it and implement the controls. But a good developer is a lazy developer. I wouldn't want to do it that way. So we created Security Advisor. Now, the Security Advisor does not cover 100% of the controls in the hardening guide, but it implements the majority of them, and it will automatically interrogate your enterprise or online environment. No impact, though. It's not going to change anything, but it's going to look for alignment to the controls in the hardening guide, and it will help you see if you have major deviations or basically warnings. Anything that's major is really, it's a basic control that isn't being met. Anything that's a warning is generally an advanced control that may be worth looking at. So you can get to the advisor from the Trust Center, trust@arcgis.com, or that QR code will take you right to it. So yeah, it's on the Trust Center. What does it do? It scans ArcGIS Line Enterprise. It does require the admin role to do this because it's looking at organizational settings, but it will not make changes. Costs nothing, costs free. We maintain it. And some people would say, like, why would you want to give that away for free? When is Esri going to monetize that? Well, in a way, organizations that use it reduce Esri's cost because our product security incident response team is inundated weekly with issues that would otherwise not occur if organizations adopted some of the practices that this tool detects. For example, public sharing to everyone, right? Allowing everybody in the organization to create and share public content is a very high-risk pattern, and it's likely going to lead to overexposure of your data. So that's generally a privilege you want to control to a limited set of people. That's an example. So we benefit, even though it does cost time and money to build and maintain it, we benefit if organizations use it. So it really doesn't do us any good to charge for it because we want your organizations to be more secure. It actually helps Esri, it reduces our cost of operating, right? Because we don't have to deal with as many incidents. There's no setup, you don't have to install anything, it runs in a browser. It takes about a minute, not even that long, to process everything. So what it looks like is you're going to launch the advisor, you're going to sign in to your enterprise or your ArcGIS Line org, and it's going to give you this view of, it's like a structured view of different security controls and how your organization aligns to them. Now, it's going to be hard to make them all green, but you should avoid having anything that's red, right? So let's take a look at that. Slideshow. So as I said, if I go to trust.arcgis.com, upper right corner, have the security advisor, which again is basically automating detection of the guidance in the hardening guide. The hardening guide goes further, but many of the controls in the hardening guide are implemented and detected with the advisor. Okay, so I'm going to sign into my ArcGIS Line org. Okay, and so immediately it's going to give me a view of, do I have kind of any major issues to pay attention to? And that's what I would focus on. If you run this tool, look for the red items and work towards addressing them. First thing I see is I'm allowing public sharing. So anyone in my org right now can share data publicly. That's a very high-risk pattern. It is the #1 issue that we see in PSERT, product security incident response. Organizations not realizing that they had users doing this, and then data got overexposed. So we're going to take care of that right away. All right, so I'm going to go into my org. This is the org I was scanning. under organization. Most of these settings are in the security section. So yeah, so the setting that it's kind of complaining about is this one here. So members that are not administrators can make their content public. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And then I may have to relog in. Yeah, let me log out and log back in. It's kind of clear my cache a little bit here. Okay, so that issue is no longer showing up. Public sharing is not allowed. Now, I mean, I can go a little bit further. Like, many organizations do want to enable anonymous access. They do want to share some content publicly, so they may or may not want to turn that off. I'll go ahead and turn it off. But that's an organizational choice, right? So that would be this setting here. So now I've globally disabled anonymous access to my org. I realize that may not be for everybody, but let's go ahead and just see what happens when we do it. Okay, so now the access and permission item is green. All right, under logins, it's complaining that I have social logins enabled. So social logins are like Facebook, Apple ID, that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and change that. That's under security and then logins. So yeah, all these guys. Just turn these off. Okay, so social logins are disabled. And I probably have to sign, yep, okay. So that's kind of the picture you're looking for. Eliminate the red, right? Those are gonna be, the red items are going to be the hardening guide basics. They are the highest risk, highest security risk, but lowest impact to fix settings. You can also look at certainly the yellow flagged items, but those are gonna generally get into like allow lists and things like that. So those are more of the advanced style. They tend to have higher operational impact, tend to break things. So you'd want to be more careful with those settings. But some organizations will aim to have all these green, and you can work in that direction. A couple of other settings that are kind of useful here. So it has a bunch of tools like this, right? It's going to look in your organization for other kind of high-risk settings. This particular feature is looking at Survey 123 surveys that have allowed public read, right? Public reading, which a lot of people think, well, if I share my content publicly, my default intent is for it to be readable. But in the case of Survey 123 surveys, what you actually want is public write, but private read, because you want to be able to collect survey information, but you don't want everyone in the world to be able to read it. So that is the default posture with Survey 123, but it is also very easy to accidentally invert that setting and lead to overexposure of, again, your data, right? So this is just going to reveal surveys that I have configured in my organization that are allowing public, like anyone in the world, to be able to read the survey results, which you may or may not want to do. And then the biggest one is just a simple link to your org that's going to allow you to see how much you have publicly shared. So that's a really good thing to stay on top of. If you are going to allow public sharing, you want to kind of regularly audit what you are sharing publicly. This is it's a powerful feature, but it's easy to like kind of with a large number of users in your organization, this can kind of get away from you. And often we don't realize how much content we're just sharing to the whole world. So that's kind of the advisor in a nutshell. Take a look at it. It's free to use. We maintain it. It takes no time to set up. You just run it and, periodically get a view of the security posture of your ArcGIS Online or enterprise organization. Okay. So that's the advisor. All right, so a little bit on zero trust architecture because it's mentioned in our hardening guide. This is a little bit of a buzzword, a little bit of a marketing term, and you'll talk to 10 different people that'll tell you 10 different things. But it is essentially this idea that we no longer want to just have anonymously accessible content. That's what zero trust means. It means that we want to identify everyone that's accessing our organization, or if we do have public content, we are deliberately making that choice. We aren't building secure systems around public access because that isn't secure, right? So there's a couple different tenets of zero trust architecture. And one of the first ones is this idea of centralized identity. So by default, within ArcGIS Line or Enterprise, you have decentralized identities. You have like local or enterprise-centric or ArcGIS Line org-centric accounts. So one of the things Zero Trust prescribes is the adoption of central identity. Most organizations have Entra, previously known as Active Directory, but there are other tools that have this capability like Shibboleth and I forget the other one, Auth. There's a bunch of them, right? All these identity management platforms. Oracle Identity Management is another example. There's plenty of them out there. They all support these protocols called SAML and OIDC. OID stands for Open ID Connect. SAML stands for Security Assertion Markup Language. They are a specification that allows for decentralized federated authentication, right? And the basic way that it works is my users authenticate to a central identity. Commonly, it's going to be like an Active Directory or an Entra, which is the Azure-based Active Directory. And then the Active Directory, Entra, SAML, OIDC system gives the user a means to authenticate to the application, be it ArcGIS Online. Ultimately, what this is doing is it's exchanging credentials through username and password as the weakest mode, but also FIDO2, WebAuthn, multi-factor authentication, PKI. There's a laundry list of Windows Hello. These are all possible with SAML OIDC identity providers. That would be like this. How am I going to do this? There we go. That's like this guy over here. This is like your Entra, your Oracle identity management system. Your users would authenticate against that, but they would be able to get a access token for ArcGIS Online by way of authenticating against these entities. And that's done via a capability within these systems called enterprise applications. And the link or the QR code here is basically just a deep link to show you how to set it up, but I'll take you through that. Okay, so before I take you through it, let me kind of show you what it looks like in practice. So another tenet of zero trust architecture is multi-factor authentication. And it really is the most effective defense against password guessing, brute force, password attacks. Multi-factor authentication is the best defense against that. And another layer beyond that is what's called phishing resistant MFA. This gets into things like biometrics, hardware tokens, YubiKeys, or Windows Hello, which is kind of using your physical devices as a security key multi-factor authenticator. So let me go ahead and show you what that kind of looks like. And the neat advantage of this is it's one of these situations where the advancing security actually makes your users' lives easier because all this kind of integrates with single sign-on. So let me kind of show how that works. All right, so in simplest terms, I'm going to show you what it looks like when I'm signed into Windows. Or it could also be a Mac that uses Intune. That's how Windows kind of joins my machine to Entra. But all these products have these kinds of capabilities. So if I'm using SAML integrated sign-in with ArcGIS Align or Enterprise, and I click sign in with SAML, because my machine is joined to that domain that I'm about to click on, my login experience looks like this. Very, very easy. No password required. Although I did in fact have to sign in to my system, right? But I signed in when I logged into my system, right? Now, the same view in its most fundamental terms looks like this. So I'm going to boil off all of the infrastructure now, and you're going to see how, like, what the maximum pane looks like for your users. Okay. So this is, again, taking away my pre-authentication, all that stuff. Okay. Notice I'm not going to provide a password. Now it's going to try to use my phone, and Bluetooth is always spotty in here, so I might have to try this once or twice, but there it is. Okay, so it sent a prompt to my phone via Bluetooth. I'm going to biometric authenticate. SAML, OIDC. That's as painful as it gets, right? That's passwordless authentication using a hardware-based access device. So that's the kind of the extreme implementation of zero trust when it comes to MFA. But as you can see, it's really quite painless for your users. And again, that's not even Windows Hello. If you use Windows Hello, I won't even see that prompt. It's like the first view where I'll show it again just because it's so fast. It's like it's hard to even notice it. It's so quick. Again, that's like this, right? I log in. Right, I'm in. Okay, so you can see why that would be desirable for your users, but it also gives you the strongest assurance against password-based attacks, because there really isn't a password here for me to attack. Okay, so real quick, how do I set all that up, right? That looks great, but there's actually a process for sure to set that up. So what I'm going to kind of show is the inner workings of how SAML is configured, but that QR code will take you to a step-by-step guide. This one actually is made by Microsoft because most of the hard work, if there's any hard work at all, is done on Entra, but our documentation also has similar guides as well. On the ArcGIS Align side, it's really, really easy. You're just going to get a metadata file and upload it to your organization, but I'll go ahead and show this experience from both ends, right? So there's kind of two parts to configure. There's the application configuration in your identity provider, that's like Entra ID, previously known as Active Directory, and there's a configuration on the ArcGIS Align side called SAML. And this is also the same kind of concept for OIDC. All right, let's look at that. So into my organization, go to security. Okay, and so under logins, so we've got a couple different login options. The one I would really recommend people use is SAML, just because it's the most mature and it's the easiest to set up. But some organizations prefer to use OIDC. That works fine too. So here's what that login configuration kind of looks like. Now, it's kind of a lot of weird looking parameters, but that all comes from Entra. So if I go over to Entra and I just go like Microsoft Entra, Enterprise Applications. Again, the QR code, which I'll bring back up, shows you how to do all this. It's really nice. I mean, they already have the applications kind of ready to go. You can go new application, can literally search for ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. See, they're right there. So you pick one of those, and that will take you through a configuration that will look like this. Now from the ArcGIS Align side, what I'm going to do, whoops, where did it go? Here. What basically happens is I have to exchange these two metadata files. So I'm going to download my service provider metadata from ArcGIS Align. That's this file here. You can take a quick look at it. Let's open this up in Visual Studio Code. Not that you really have to look at it, but we can just see what it is. This should format. Is it refactor? No, I don't want to refactor it. Well, anyway, it's an XML document. I mean, it basically provides the login structure information that Entra will ingest. So I downloaded that metadata XML, and I would upload it here. So if I upload that here, it's going to give me all this configuration. I don't have to set anything. Just upload it, it'll configure it, right? Then I have to download the Entra metadata XML. Okay, take a look at that. It doesn't really matter, it's just an XML file. It has things like the certificate information that signs and validates the request so that when I sign into Entra, the authentication package that comes back is validatable by ArcGIS Align. ArcGIS Align is going to need this, right? So I give ArcGIS Align's metadata file to Entra. I give Entra's metadata file to ArcGIS Align. So I go back over here, and I would do upload metadata from file, and I would just pick that file that I downloaded, and it will configure it just like this, right? So that is how I got this sign-in experience to work. Again, we'll just show it one more time. And yeah, you can see how kind of seamless and easy it is. You can even go one step further if you wanted to make it truly feel like single sign-on. It's a little tip. I actually learned it this week because I didn't know we did this. If you disable every setting, every auth flow but SAML or Entra ID, then you won't even see the login page anymore in ArcGIS Align. It'll just send you over to Entra, single sign-on, and back. It'll even reduce your clicks by one step further. So I nailed these on for my demo, but still, that's another. You can take it even a step further and just reduce the clicks to your users. All right, so that is setting up SAML. And then one of the last concepts, there's many concepts in Zero Trust, but central identity, that's like integrating with your organization's identity provider, be it Entra or Oracle, Identity Manager or whatever. Multi-factor authentication, preferably passwordless authentication using something like a physical key or a push, I use the passkey feature of my phone to do that in the demo. Or Windows Hello, which is true passwordless. Those are another cornerstone of Zero Trust. And one of the final cornerstones is conditional access. So this is not a demo of everything Entra, but Entra has this feature built in. And so what you can do is once you have that SAML integration in place, we can go into the Identity Center of Entra and we can create a conditional access policy, conditional access. This is the Entra Identity Center. And you can create, so your organization likely, if it uses Entra, likely has a conditional access policy, so you will likely just inherit it. But I can show you an example of one that's highly focused to the applications we just configured. So this is a conditional access policy. Has all users included. It's targeting specific resources. So I'm saying this policy applies to the ArcGIS Align organization. And I'm setting a couple of conditions. One, that I only allow logins from networks I trust, i.e. IPs that I trust. So that could be regional binding, US only, or a set of IPs that you know and trust with your organization. That's one layer of conditional access. Another layer of conditional access is constraining device platforms. You could do that. And you can grant access conditional to having multi-factor authentication. So that right there is how you enforce multi-factor authentication against your SAML OIDC integrated ArcGIS Online configuration. Your organization may have this on by default, but you can have a highly tailored conditional access policy for ArcGIS Online if you so desire. So that's the final cornerstone of Zero Trust that I will cover. I mean, there are more details, but really with Zero Trust, if you're using central identity, you're using MFA, and you're using conditional access, you're very well on your way to meeting the objectives of Zero Trust. Oh, and then last thing, that QR code takes you, if you want to take a picture of it, takes you to the conditional access guidance that in Entra that describes what I just showed. So that may be helpful. Okay, developer stuff. Now time for the dessert. So in July 2024 and 11.4 release of ArcGIS Enterprise, we came out with a new capability called API key credentials. Now, many people probably have used something like this out of developers.arcgis.com, but it was limited in its privilege. It couldn't talk to secured services, basically. And it certainly didn't have privileges like the ability to administer your organization. But this new feature, which is now in the main ArcGIS Online and Enterprise user experience, is a developer credential that can do as much as you want or as little as you want. That's another thing. It's scopable. So let's look at like where we were and what that kind of felt like. So prior to last release, the way everybody seems to have the need for automated processes like running background jobs, be them either notebooks or GitHub Actions or on-prem Jenkins jobs, like whatever. There's a wide variety of needs for automated processes. These are like service account workflows. The way you had to do this before was a human would have to sign into ArcGIS Online or your SAML IDP, whatever. You'd get an access token which represented that human. Then you'd bake that access token into your code in one way or another. And then you'd use that access token to access content. That access token did not last more than 14 days. And even if you used a refresh token, which is kind of an advanced orchestration of this thing, it didn't last more than, I think, 60 or 90 days. So what that boils down to is lots of pain and lots of risk. Risk to the automation failing because the authentication stops working because you didn't rotate the key fast enough. Risk because the tokens were unlimited scope. If you created these, they were you and everything that you could do. So if you lost track of them, you were compromised, right? So this was never really, the traditional access token was never really intended for automation. It's intended to support user interactive flows. Like I'm building an application and users log into my application and they're going to do stuff and that works fine. But if you're trying to build automation, it was really a problem. So this new feature that came out, again, July of last year and is now available in 11.4 Enterprise, very similar flow. User logs in to SAML or ArcGIS Online directly as a local user account, whatever, any flow you want, but you log in, you're going to get a API key. It is an access token. It is an access token, but it's a specially structured access token. You're going to use that same process you may have used before to get that into your code. Now, ideally, you're using it in like an env file, and you're loading it as an environment variable, or you're using it via like a secrets manager. But still, you're getting it into your code somehow, right? You're running your process, and your process will interact with content. But the difference now is that key has up to a 1-year expiration. And you can scope it. You can say, even though I'm an administrator, this key that I'm creating can only read a service, can't do anything else. Or it can only edit this one specific service. So the risk goes way down, right? I no longer have to think about, well, maybe I need to create some like headless service account user, with really, really narrowly constrained privileges. You don't do that anymore. You can use your fully privileged account, but you can scope access way, way down, so you can radically reduce the blast radius of that key down to exactly what you want to do. So let's see how that is done. Okay. So I'm going to go into my org, right? Content. New item. This is the feature I'm referring to. Developer credentials, and specifically this right here, API key credentials. So this is really, really useful for doing anything automated, headless, background job operations. What this is not good for is baking it into a front-end JavaScript code and then hosting that publicly, because if you do that, then anyone that has access to the app can use that key. So this is really oriented around automation, background jobs, GitHub Actions, notebooks, things like that. Here I can set an expiration date up to a year out. So let's just do 2026. Let's do, what's today's date? 12th. So we'll do 3/12/2026. Okay, so that's a year-long token. I can set different levels of privilege, all the way up to administrative privilege if I want. So if I have like an administrative flow that I want to execute, I can do that. For my purpose here, I'm going to create one that simply has edit privileges to features. That's all it can do. And more than that, I'm going to restrict it so that it can only edit one feature. And then finally, I'm going to generate it. I'm going to take this API key is an access token. So if you've ever worked with ArcGIS access tokens, that's what this is. It's just a long-lived access token with extremely focused scope. Now I'm going to take this, let's close this guy down, and I'm going to put it into an env file. I really caution against baking this into your code directly, because that is how you, and then like pushing it to GitHub, because that's how you're going to expose the key. Even though the key will have narrow access, you don't want to put the key directly in your code. You want to put it in like an env file. Okay, so there it is. Okay, I'm going to save that file. And then we're going to look at my alert feature code. And let's see here. Okay. And I'm going to source, cd API key token source DNV. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and run this in debugger so we can kind of see it happen. Oh, it failed? Let's see, what happened? Thank you. Source CNV. Oh, you know what? I think I put it in the wrong folder. Thank you. There you go. Okay, good eye. All right, so I'm going to run that now. So that access, so what I'm doing is I'm just reading that access token into a variable based on the locally set environment variable. This is completely compatible with stuff like GitHub Actions. That's why I kind of do it this way. And the example that I'm using is absolutely product agnostic. So it works with absolutely every product and capability we have. because it is an access token. It's not a special kind of different thing. It's an access token. And the example I'm using is just one off of developers at ArcGIS.com for editing feature services. So it's nothing special or magical. So the API key is in the access token here. I'm passing it as a bearer token. You don't have to do that, but it is the most industry standard pattern, right? You could also do question mark token equals in the URL. That would work too. You could also put it in the post body. You could put it in a cookie, but the industry standard pattern is to set the authorization header bearer token. So that's what I'm going to do. And then we'll run it and we'll fire the request. Okay, and it did update the object. So what did it do, right? So if I go over to the let's go over to the content that I just changed, and I'll show you what changed. So here is that feature service that I gave it access to. And we'll look at the table. Where is the table? Ah, thank you. I'm used to seeing it full screen. Okay, so what I did was I set the alert. All I did was I changed this status field to alert. In this case, I picked a random object, which is like the 18th one down. And it's that one right there. And I changed it to alert status, right? So I'm going to go ahead and run it again, and we'll just see what it's doing. Okay. Okay, now it updated item 21. So if I refresh this, so we got a new alert in here. I think it's that one that it updated. Now, let's look at a visualization of this, right? So let's go to, I created a map demo of this. And home content. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to keep running this. And you're going to see this map change. And every new alert I push out is going to trigger a new object's going to start going red. So you can kind of see that happening, right? So now, similarly, the same code I'm going to start running. I'm going to run it again and start making them. I have similar code on the back end. It's doing the same thing. It's turning them back to green. So I could just kind of let this run. Right now they're all green again. And let me just have this guy fire a few more off. And the funny thing is I have this demo running in the expo right now. So I have another system pushing updates into this data set. So you're going to see it kind of changing in real time. Okay. So I can just keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that. Okay, so that is, and that's a lot less painful than orchestrating personal access tokens and a lot less risk. So strongly recommend if you do any kind of automation, please take advantage of this. It's gonna make your life so much easier. You're gonna have way less breakage and you're gonna have a far more secure solution. Yeah, we just showed that demo. Okay, so what did we cover? We did ArcGIS line compliance. We're now FedRAMP monitored authorized, which means you can store, from a federal perspective, you can store private data, PII, and what's the other one? Controlled unclassified information. Talked about the hardening guide, then looked at the security advisor, which is kind of a shortcut to implementing the hardening guide. And finally, concluded with automation and authentication and the new API key, which I highly recommend you guys take advantage of. So that covers all of our topics, and I'll stay here for about 10 more minutes with questions. Yes? Question is, when is the API key coming to enterprise? It is available at 11.4. Yeah. And if you want to meet me at the Expo Island, I'm on the security booth. There are other strategies that you can use if you're at prior versions to 11.4, but they are of this variety, right? They are of that variety, right? So I hesitate to, demonstrate that because it's really not a great pattern. But if you're at prior versions, that you'll have to use that until you get to 11.4. Question?
How does the security advisor look before offline or air-gapped installs in enterprise?
Okay, yeah. The question is, how does the security advisor work for offline air-gapped? Your system has to be able to reach the air-gapped, your machine, because it runs as a client-side JavaScript process. So your system here would have to be able to reach the enterprise system, and otherwise it would work. So yeah, so I mean, you'd have to kind of like open it. I guess you'd have to like open it up, have it running, and then maybe plug it to the air-gapped system. It's not really like a commonly supported pattern, but it would work as long as your machine can reach the air-gapped system. Question. Oh, that's a good question. Can you suppress warnings from the security advisor? No. When you run it, yeah, you're looking for like ways to set exceptions. Yeah, no, it doesn't have exception setting, but that's a really interesting feature. We should look into that. I'll bring that up with my developer today, in the black shirt here. Yeah.
Hi, thanks so much. On the API key, I'm an administrator.
Yes.
Developers want API keys all the time. My question is there a way to view all the API keys like in one location? Because I don't know what keys they might be doing.
That's a good question. So the question is, can you view all the API keys in one location? Let's talk after. I believe the answer is yes, because it is a class of item, and I think we can search for them and find them, but actually haven't had that question, so that's a good one. It's a class of item, so if we find the right search string, we can dig them up. In the green shirt.
Can you use the API keys for Power Automate flows?
Sure. Can use API keys for Power Automate flows. And I can say that confidently because it's an access token. So it authenticates against our services. End of story, right? So it can work with anything. What I showed was not even an ArcGIS SDK. That was me using the request library of Python. So yes, it's product agnostic. There was a question here, yes.
Does the security app also go, is it just the portal, or does it go through like your servers and say you should disable the REST endpoints and that stuff too?
The question is, does the security advisor interrogate your ArcGIS servers? I'd have to say to a degree, yes, because it's interrogating like the configuration of the ArcGIS enterprise, and the servers are a component of that. Like, yeah, you're like, does it look and see if specifically you mentioned like, is the REST API enabled? I don't know if it checks for that, but we can look at it afterwards and see if that's possible. In the light blue shirt, then I'll get you over here.
Do the API keys, you have the options to limit their scope. Is it the same options that we had in the roles section where we assign kind of the security roles, or is it?
Yes. So, good question. The question is, when narrowing the scope of the API keys privilege, is it equivalent to the same privileges that emerge in the roles interface of ArcGIS Enterprise and Online? Answer, yes, it is the roles. It also has a secondary scoping to specific items. So you can scope both privilege and content. And there was someone over here that, yeah, we'll get this. Yeah, sir, go ahead, and then I'll get you in the blue shirt over here. You're good. Yeah, you.
Is there a preferred pattern as to tell me that edge and token expiration?
Oh, is there a preferred pattern for how to manage like token expirations, like how long? So I didn't show this, but they're all revocable in the interface. Let me pull that up real quick and show you. So that was another thing that we added, right, was this ability to manage these things. So you can generate a secondary API key so you can rotate them, right? And then you can invalidate the previous one or regenerate it. And regenerating will invalidate and regenerate. Now, as far as like recommendations for expirations, this would be something that would be driven more like by the compliance requirements of the organization. So if it was FedRAMP moderate, for example, they would consider this a key, and keys would have to be rotated at minimum every year. But there are higher order compliance requirements that may require more aggressive rotation. And then there was a question here in the blue, yes?
When a user generates a API key, if that user then leaves the company or whatever, goes outside the enterprise, their keys, when their account is removed, their keys get removed as well automatically, or that have to be available?
It's a good question. So say I have a user, so this user that I have here that generated this API key, what happens when I like delete it or disable it or whatever? So the API keys cannot be moved around. So if I delete a user, it will delete the API key with them. If I disable a user, I might have to look into how that would work. I suspect it would still function because it's still there. But I've tried to move them around and I've deleted the users and it wipes out the API key with it. So yes, it is associated with that user and it's not something you can move around. It's one of the few content types you can't move. I'm sorry, there was a question over here and then I'll come back to you, ma'am. Sorry. Yes, you've had your hand up for a while. Yes. So the question is, if I have everybody use SAML, how do I do administration? Because that's going to like disallow me to sign in using my built-in administrative account. Simply put, and this kind of, in our hardening guide, kind of covers a scenario, but you'll grant the users, in fact yourself, the privileged administrator as a role, and then you'll have, like I am signed in as a SAML account, and it is an administrator, right? And then at that point you can disable the ArcGIS login. And there is a backup method of signing in if you disable all sign-in methods but SAML. Truly what's going on there is it's manipulating the UI, not so much the capabilities of the system. So those users are still there and you can still use them, but you'd have to basically interact with them via the REST API to like if you needed a break glass workflow, you would have to use like the REST API to and you wanted to like re-enable the login UI for built-in accounts, you could do it, but it would be like a REST call at that point. Go ahead, ma'am. Yeah.
One time, I remember the whole, media or SAML, they're all in town.
Yeah.
The only way I could get in was
The built-in. Yeah.
my built-in account, and
Right.
thankfully we were able to reconfigure everything because things just kind of went down.
Yeah.
On our infrastructure side. So, that I think to me is why I don't
Sure.
disable that. Knowing if there's a backstory, that would be great.
Yeah, so the question kind of is and this is the last question I'll take here, but I am in the expo all day today and tomorrow on the security island in the ArcGIS systems section, so I can answer any more questions you guys have there. Basically, what you're describing is a disaster scenario, right? Where my SAML system or the integration, something fails, now nobody can sign in, and I'm uncomfortable disabling built-in accounts. That is a organizational choice, and that is why disabling all accounts but SAML integrated accounts is what we would call an advanced workflow in the hardening guide. It is covered, but there is that risk, and so you have to have a disaster recovery kind of plan for implementing such an aggressive security posture, right? Yeah, so that's all the questions I can take here because I got to let the next group come in. But I will be at the security island all day and happy to answer any other questions you have. Thank you.